Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the Environmental Law Institute's Introduction to the Social and Environmental Compliance Inspections Training course, co-sponsored by INECE, the Inter-American Development Bank, and Redlafica. My name is Sarah Viken, and I'm the Manager of Educational Programs here at ELI. This whole program, we are using simultaneous translation, which means that you can choose if you'd like to listen in English or Spanish. You can access both the English and Spanish interpretation channels with the interpretation button below. If you don't see an interpretation button, you can click More, which is the little circle with 3 dots at the bottom of your Zoom. You should see Interpretation, and you can pick which channel you want, English or Spanish. I'll let Veronica say that for all of our Spanish-speaking folks.
En este seminario vamos a usar traducción simultánea y para acceder a ella ustedes deben pinchar los 3 botoncitos que dicen más y ahí seleccionar la interpretación y el idioma en el que desean escuchar.
Thank you, Veronica. I want to take a moment to thank all of our wonderful speakers for being here with us and taking the time to introduce such a wonderful program. We will be taking questions during the webinar, so please submit any questions that you have using Zoom's Q&A function. You can also find that at the bottom of your screen. We encourage you to use the chat as well for observations and comments, but please be aware that we'll be pulling discussion questions from that Q&A. Today's webinar will also be recorded and posted on the event webpage within a few business days, and you can find all of our slides on the event webpage up already. I'll drop the link to that page momentarily in the chat. Now, before we get started, I want to introduce our moderators. Leading today's discussion will be Lee Paddock and Juan Antonio Martinez. Lee is the Managing Director of INECE and a visiting scholar here at ELI. He's also a distinguished professorial lecturer of environmental law at the George Washington University Law School, where he previously served as Dean of the Environmental Law Studies. Juan is the lead social specialist at the Inter-American Development Bank, where he leads issues related to social risks for Indigenous peoples, land acquisition, physical and economic displacement, and stakeholder engagement of the environmental and social policy framework in the bank's Environmental and Social Solutions Unit. Before joining IDB, he spent 20 years at the World Bank, where he worked for multiple regions around the world in areas of social development, inclusion of Indigenous peoples, natural resource management, and land acquisition issues. Thank you both so much for facilitating today's program. With that, I'll turn it over to Lee to get us started.
Thank you, Sarah, and welcome everyone. We're excited to have a worldwide audience for this program. Today's webinar is the culmination of a 4-year process in developing a modernized inspector training course that has its origins in work that INECE originated more than 25 years ago. I'll talk a little bit about that history in a few moments, but before I do that, I wanted to turn the introduction over to my colleague and the very close collaborator in this 2-year-long effort to build a new inspectors training course, Juan Antonio Martinez. Juan, thank you so much again for all of your assistance over the last couple of years. And the floor is yours to introduce the program.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Paddock. And it's my pleasure really to participate in this important event. That I understand that there are more than 200 participants online, and that is great. So I would like to say that this effort of preparing this training course online is under the framework of the regional policy dialogue that the Inter-American Development Bank organizes every year. And it includes not only international events and interchanges of experiences among the different participants in Latin America and the Caribbean, but also includes this type of events that we do in collaboration with our partners, such as the INECE, EPA, and other international organizations. I would like to mention also the permanent collaboration that we have with our partners in Latin America, and especially with the Latin American Redlafica, which is one of the most important networkings on fiscalization process in the Americas. And this training course, as Dr. Pado already mentioned, this is it is a 2 years course, maybe a little bit more. And now the version is in English, and we are working very hard to initiate the translation in Spanish. So all of the members of the Latin America countries can access this also in the Spanish language. My colleague, Veronica Campos, will explain with more details what is the context of the course, and then we can respond any particular questions. The IDB collaboration, especially from the Environmental and Social Solutions Unit, where I work, is one of the most contributors of this efforts in putting together this training course. And welcome everyone, and please go ahead to the next presenter.
So I wanted to just provide some context for the development of this course. INECE is an organization founded by the Dutch and the US government in the late 1980s. The Environmental Law Institute in Washington, D.C. serves as INECE's secretariat currently. And our mission from the beginning has been to help build the capacity to conduct effective compliance and enforcement activities around the world, and to facilitate information exchange related to compliance and enforcement activities. We work closely with regional enforcement networks in East Africa, Europe, South Asia, Australia, and the Pacific region, and South and Central America. If you're interested in finding out more about INECE and the work that we do, the very simple URL is INECE, INECE.org. Inspector training has been one of the important issues for INECE from the start. And as many of you know, turnover in the inspector ranks around the world tends to be fairly high. A lot of new folks enter the field. For an individual country, preparing training materials for new inspectors can be a challenge, and certainly at the subnational level, the training capacity can be a challenge. So INECE early on developed an inspector's training course, which at the time was an in-person course. And as we all know, having experienced the pandemic and the amount of time and effort it takes to do in-person training courses is substantial. And we now know that there are other tools that we can use that may be able to do effective training. And so one of the things that we did beginning really just after the pandemic in the summer of 2020 at INECE was to begin working with EPA, the US EPA, on updating the inspector training course, which the syllabus was quite old at that time, and designing the course for distance learning. We consulted early on with the then leadership of Redlafica, where the presidency was housed in Costa Rica, and with EPA in outlining a new basic inspectors training course. And since those early discussions, we've been working closely with Chile, who now holds the presidency for Redlafica. So in the fall of 2022, as Jose our Juan Antonio mentioned, we shared this idea of an updated training course with Redlafica and with the Inter-American Development Bank at the IDB's regional dialogue in the Dominican Republic. And the idea was well received at that meeting, and we began then working closely with IDB to create a new inspectors training course. We're of course very grateful for the work of Lara Chinaro at IDB, who was the course designer and spent a great deal of time taking our ideas and turning those ideas into a distance learning course, which we will explain later. It's a pretty massive effort. It includes several modules in addressing different areas of the work of an inspector. We're also very grateful at INECE for the work that the Redlafica leadership and its members did in reviewing the draft course and commenting on the course, and for the work that Ariel Abramowitz from EPA did in identifying important areas where new material needed to be added to the course in order to address issues that inspectors have to deal with today, which is a significantly different world than it was 20 or 25 years ago. So you'll hear from Ariel in a moment about US EPA's contributions to the course. And finally, I want to give special thanks to Dr. Juan Antonio Martinez, who has championed this project for the last 2+ years within IDB and helped turn the idea of a modernized virtual inspector training course into a reality, which we're talking about today. So with that, I want to turn the discussion over to Ariel, who is an environmental engineer and environmental protection specialist at the Office of Enforcement and Compliance Assistance at US EPA, who played a very important role in filling in some major gaps that needed to be added to the old inspectors training course. Ariel, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much, Lee. Hello, my name is Ariel Abramowitz, and I am in the Environmental Protection Agency's Office of Enforcement and Compliance Assurance. Within that office, I work in the Office of Compliance as an environmental engineer. I have experience as a clean water field inspector and recently have been working on policy as it relates to enforcement, compliance, inspectors, inspector credentials, and training. One of my office's main goals is to train inspectors to conduct effective compliance monitoring activities across the country. Over the past 2 years, I have been working with my office's senior international advisor, Amy Porter, in collaboration with the Inter-American Development Bank, Redlafica, and INECE to contribute to the Social and Environmental Compliance Online Inspectors Training course. Next slide, please. So some brief history about EPA's involvement with international inspector training and INECE. In 1992, a collaboration with the government of the Netherlands and Poland led to a handbook published by INECE for a course called The Principles of Environmental Compliance and Enforcement. In 1998, a collaboration between EPA and INECE led to the development of the training course Conducting Environmental Compliance Inspections. It was developed to instruct participants in the skills needed to conduct environmental compliance inspections. It was piloted in Malaysia in 2001, and it has been offered in over 30 countries worldwide since then. The course provided participants with an approach for effectively conducting environmental compliance inspections, becoming involved in the environmental compliance review, and the resolution of any violations found. As such, the target audience of the course consisted of government and other official inspectors and investigators who have a good understanding of basic scientific concepts and an awareness of environmental laws and enforcement processes of their country. The course was not designed for specific regulatory or media areas, or for specific industrial or municipal groups. Rather, it was intended to be an introduction to the common skills needed for any type of environmental compliance inspection where a determination of the facility's compliance status was required. So if we fast forward to 2022, about 2 years ago, when EPA became really involved in the recreating of a similar course that is entirely online and accessible to anyone at any time, we worked to make the information online friendly and updated some of the outdated information from the previous in-person course. Next slide, please. So as part of the basis for the International Social and Environmental Compliance Online Inspectors Training, EPA pulled most of its contribution from our own internal basic inspector training course. Additionally, we looked at the older international training courses and compared that to EPA's basic inspector training to see where updates needed to be made. The EPA basic inspector training curriculum includes the following topics: enforcement overviews, inspection planning, field inspection steps, actions, and the types of evidence to collect, sampling planning and techniques, procedures for gathering evidence in field documentation, writing a successful inspection report with examples on how to successfully and factually convey findings, and lastly, post-inspection activities and the potential enforcement outcomes. What we needed to do was to generalize the United States-focused practices to have them apply to anyone in this new course. Therefore, we compared scope, duration, and audience to determine what we wanted to add or make changes to. Next slide, please. As I stated, we use EPA's basic inspector training, which is the training that all United States federal EPA inspectors must take to obtain their inspector credentials. And we used information on 11 topics that the Inter-American Development Bank specifically requested. This included the topics of legal authority, identifying various rationale for inspections, targeting and facility selection tools and decisions, inspector credentialing, integrating observations of facility operations and practices with regulatory citations, being an effective witness, records review, certifications and calibrations, specifically as it related to sampling devices, electronic inspection recording devices, inspection materials, and post-inspection actions. Next slide, please. The goal was to have content applicable to any environmental compliance inspector from any country and to have it generalized and not media specific. The content addresses basic environmental enforcement issues and techniques that are common across country lines. These include enforcement and compliance overviews, inspection planning, targeting, and facility selection, field inspection structure, steps, and actions, the collection of evidence, sampling planning and techniques, procedures for gathering evidence and field documentation, writing successful inspection reports and how to convey those findings, and post-inspection activities and the potential enforcement outcomes. Lastly, we wanted the course to be accessible online at any time at no cost to anyone. Next slide, please. Since the development of the original in-person international inspector training, new requirements were needed. The in-person training was infrequently offered and was expensive to travel to. In a technology-forward world, this new online training offers a more flexible learning environment. Students can access the training anytime, anywhere, online, and it is self-paced to allow for scheduling flexibilities and differences in world time zones. Additionally, the online nature of the course allows for easy future language translation, since the in-person training was only taught in English. We also mentioned some new technologies that are recently used in environmental inspections. This includes monitoring with drones, or sometimes called unmanned aircraft systems, and satellite imagery from Google Earth or ArcGIS, which can improve the quality and consistency of information collected by inspectors before, during, or after environmental inspections. Nowadays, many governments use smartphones and tablets with integrated software programs to help with inspections and inspection report output. Further, we wanted to mention social issues such as environmental justice and equity. Next slide, please. I wanted to mention some challenges we experienced. One was that we had to make the training applicable to any country, legal, or cultural setting. And this was tough to translate from EPA, a United States EPA centric training. We cannot refer to United States laws or regulations, and we had to keep in mind differences in access to technologies such as smartphones, tablets, drones, and advanced monitoring cameras. We had to keep in mind differences in social and cultural aspects, such as community engagement and gender roles. We had to think about regulatory frameworks, such as various statutory and regulatory programs, and cooperative federalism between national and state or city regulations. We had to keep in mind differences in enforcement practices, such as focusing on certain sectors, broad government campaigns versus localized enforcement, and emphasis on public complaints. Economic contexts are extremely important as well, since countries have varying levels of resource allocation and infrastructure. Lastly, we had to consider differences in compliance promotion, both regulatory and non-regulatory approaches, such as education, voluntary programs, and self-reporting programs. Next slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ariel. And I want to check to see if we've been joined by Superintendent Maria Claude Udina as of yet.
Yes, she's
Sí,
here.
por acá estoy.
Okay, very good. Well, welcome, Superintendent. Just sorry, I have a cough. So, Superintendent, Plummer Bodine is a lawyer with the from the University of Chile, with over 30 years experience. She holds a master's degree in environmental law from the University of Paris, Sorbonne, and has completed specialized studies in economic management and environment and natural resources law. And she currently holds the pro tem presidency of Redlafica. And I first of all want to thank her for all of the work that Redlafica has done in helping with the design and review of the course, and all of the cooperation that we've had between INECE and Redlafica over the last 2 years. So, Superintendent Bodine, the floor is yours. Thank you again.
Muchas gracias, muchas gracias. Aprovecho de saludar a todos y todas los que están hoy día conectados. Felicitar también a todas las instituciones y a todos los actores que han estado en esta creación, ¿no?, de este curso para fiscalizadores online. Y esperamos, ¿no?, que sea de todo provecho para cada uno de quienes van a hacer este curso. Si me permite pasar a la PPT, por favor. A la siguiente, por favor.
Next one, please.
Gracias. Bueno, hoy día yo estoy presidiendo la Red Latinoamericana de Fiscalización Ambiental. La siguiente. En esta calidad hemos realizado una serie de actividades muy importantes, pero antes que nada es importante dar algunos elementos que caractericen y que se pueden comprender cuál es el alcance de esta Red Latinoamericana de Fiscalización Ambiental. Esta es una red que está integrada por instituciones públicas, lo cual le da un elemento bien interesante e importante justamente para efectos de poder hacer coordinación entre las agencias públicas para fortalecer en particular sus capacidades. En ese sentido, uno de los objetivos de la red es mejorar la fiscalización y el cumplimiento ambiental en los países a través de estas agencias, avanzar por eso mismo en tener una mejor protección ambiental y, evidentemente, fortalecer el rol de la fiscalización y el cumplimiento ambiental. Los ejes de la red se han focalizado especialmente en materias de transfronterizas, vinculados a los efectos ambientales transfronterizos, en el desarrollo de indicadores a nivel regional en materia de cumplimiento ambiental, en compartir prácticas que nos permita conocer y generar sinergias y colaboraciones entre las agencias, y fortalecer las capacidades instaladas de los profesionales de estas agencias públicas. La siguiente, por favor. La red es una red relativamente nueva, ¿no? Parte la red el año 2013 con algunos países que, digamos, buscaron generar esta organización, esta forma de coordinación entre las agencias con una lógica de fortalecimiento de capacidades y focalizadas en la fiscalización ambiental. El año 2014 se suman 2 nuevos países. El 2016 un tercero. El 2017 ya estamos, ¿no es cierto?, en una red mucho más, más robusta de un punto de vista de del número de países y agencias que entran en la red. Se genera ahí también un cambio de estatutos, de regulación. Y el año pasado se unió el más reciente país, que es Uruguay, y llegamos hoy día a 16 países que conforman esta red. Por lo tanto, estamos hablando de un número muy significativo y que comprende a los principales países de América del Sur. La siguiente, por favor, de América Central y del Sur. Ahora, el año pasado, dentro de los encuentros anuales, el año pasado nos reunimos en México en una muy buena con una muy buena agenda de trabajo, se logró identificar temas y focalizar los equipos de trabajo que permitiera avanzar en estos temas, ¿no? En impacto ambientales transfronterizos, en el monitoreo participativo en fiscalización, en buenas prácticas de fiscalización y uso de tecnología, y en modelos sancionatorios y herramientas legales u otro tipo de herramientas que promuevan el cumplimiento ambiental. Y finalmente el cambio climático. Estos 5 líneas, ¿no?, de trabajo han sido bastante relevadas a lo largo del tiempo y que se logró focalizar su trabajo durante el año 2024 para avanzar en distintos mecanismos de colaboración en estas materias. La siguiente, por favor. Las actividades que hemos logrado realizar hasta la fecha, durante el año 2024, en estas distintas materias, van desde encuentros, ¿no es cierto?, en algunos de los países miembros, en intercambio de experiencias, en la elaboración de documentos, en jornadas de trabajo, y eso entre países, ¿no? Acá hay algunos de los ejemplos. Por ejemplo, en monitoreo participativo en fiscalización, se hizo un trabajo muy interesante, muy bueno, respecto a hallazgo en torno a el acuerdo de Escazú, que terminó en un documento que va a estar público, y lo cual implicó y que ha sido muy valorado en los espacios en que se ha logrado compartir y mostrar cómo fue este trabajo colaborativo entre las dos agencias, entre los dos países. Y así varias otras iniciativas que van mostrando que esta red latinoamericana de fiscalización ambiental es una red que está activa, que está viva, que hay mucho interés de las agencias y de los países en seguir fortaleciendo las distintas materias de acuerdo a sus propias necesidades. La siguiente, por favor. Nosotros hace poco, como red latinoamericana, hicimos una encuesta a los distintos países de la red para identificar qué están mirando estos países o estas agencias, estos países, respecto a los desafíos que hay que seguir mirando en la región. Sigamos, la siguiente, por favor. Y en ese levantamiento de inquietudes, identificación de desafíos, podemos nosotros resumirlo en algunas materias. La tecnología y el uso de la tecnología es un aspecto que se releva permanentemente en la mejora de los procesos, en buscar automatizar procesos, en facilitar, ¿no es cierto?, la toma de decisión o el análisis de información. La necesidad de fortalecer los equipos de trabajo, ¿no? Fortalecer las capacidades técnicas. El desafío que es permanente la necesidad de fortalecer a nivel de más presupuestos, ¿no? Normalmente, y hay una coincidencia en los países de los pocos presupuestos asignados a las agencias y a esta materia en particular, lo cual impacta evidentemente en todo el quehacer de las gestiones de cada una de estas instituciones. También desafíos legales, ¿no? Muchos de los marcos regulatorios están desactualizados, no responden por eso mismo a, por ejemplo, a los mismos avances de la tecnología. Hay algunos con bajos niveles de cumplimiento normativo, mucho desconocimiento también de la propia normativa por parte de los obligados o regulados. También se plantea como desafío la necesidad de fortalecer el seguimiento, el monitoreo, la relación con la demanda ciudadana, con el ciudadano, ¿no? Que busca y requiere una intervención más rápida, más efectiva de las agencias. La siguiente, por favor. ¿Cuáles son, a partir de estos desafíos y en general de lo que nosotros hemos podido trabajar en este periodo y en estos años, la principal barrera para avanzar son los limitados recursos presupuestarios que se disponen, ¿no? Es una barrera muy importante y que se coincide con toda la, digamos, la mayoría de las agencias y los países. La necesidad, ¿no es cierto?, y la falta o la limitación en la formación de capacidades, la necesidad de seguir fortaleciendo, y por eso este curso entra en el corazón de una de las demandas y unas necesidades permanentes, que es fortalecer las capacidades para hacer una mejor fiscalización. Y la barrera de los marcos regulatorios, en algunos casos muy deficitarios o desactualizados respecto a las nuevas demandas, necesidades y urgencias ambientales. La siguiente, por favor. En este mismo contexto de consulta a los países de la red, también se identificó cuáles son los aspectos si uno pudiese colocar en una priorización para mejorar la fiscalización, ¿no? Capacidades, donde está recursos presupuestarios, capacidades técnicas, mejoras institucionales, organizacionales, que pueden incidir, por ejemplo, en tener mayor autonomía como organización, ¿no? Menos dependencia de los cambios de administración, por ejemplo. La integración en materia, otro aspecto para seguir fortaleciendo y trabajando tecnología, uso de la información, inteligencia en la fiscalización para mejorar la fiscalización, no solamente de un punto de vista de la cobertura, sino también en la calidad de la información. De un punto de vista más procesal o procedimental, ¿no? Fortalecer los marcos legales, generar guías, manuales de información, mejorar las formas de enfrentar contingencias o urgencias ambientales. Y finalmente, la cobertura de un punto de vista de la presencia del rol fiscalizador y de las agencias en el territorio dentro del cual tienen que fiscalizar, entendiendo que estamos en general, digamos, sometidos a grandes territorios, cada uno con distintas dificultades de un punto de vista de acceso y otras que también se requiere generar y fortalecer estrategias, formas para mejorar y ampliar esta cobertura de fiscalización. La siguiente, por favor. Ahora, hemos realizado en este periodo una serie de experiencias destacadas y que era importante compartir en este espacio justamente para, digamos, seguir fortaleciendo y promoviendo, ¿no?, el trabajo colaborativo en el marco de la red. Aquí está una lista, ¿no?, donde se releva un país en particular, con los cuales se hicieron cada uno de ellos distintas experiencias que son importantes de compartir. Uruguay, por ejemplo, experiencias en materia de control del sector agropecuario, Perú, desarrollo de sistemas de alerta temprana, tenemos en Paraguay, ¿no?, la cooperación interinstitucional, es decir, hay una serie de experiencias en cada uno de los países y agencias que son de interés para efectos de la red y para tanto compartirlas como también aprender de esas experiencias. La siguiente, por favor. Y finalmente, ¿cómo se han identificado algunos elementos, ¿no?, para una mirada más de largo plazo, ¿no?, de seguir trabajando en estas mismas líneas que la red históricamente ha ido profundizando y que se han ido los temas actualizando de acuerdo a las nuevas necesidades? Hay un espíritu muy positivo de todos los países que conforman la red de fortalecer este mecanismo de coordinación y espacio todavía para seguir trabajando, ¿no? Hay un fuerte compromiso de los equipos, permite a las agencias poder justamente conocer otras experiencias y mejorar las propias. Permite también fortalecer un enfoque preventivo de transparencia, de acceso a la información, de poder conocer y hacer mejoras en sus propios sistemas de gobernanza, por ejemplo, en materias de información y acceso de información, etc. Es decir, finalmente, y con esto termino, tenemos una red de fiscalización ambiental América Latina, el Caribe, que nos permite estar muy contentos hasta donde hoy día hemos avanzado y también con una línea clara de continuar con este proceso. El curso que se lanza en este momento de fiscalización va justamente en esa línea, ¿no?, en fortalecer, en promover una mejor capacidad técnica para lograr una mejor y más fiscalización ambiental en cada uno de nuestros países. Muchas gracias y con esto termino.
Thank you, Superintendent Bodine. We really appreciate the time that you've taken to speak with us today and pointing out the really important aspects of the inspector training, because it helps advance the work in the areas of technology and human resources, hopefully helps with budgets, and that the training is available at no charge and with compliance. And also thank you for the really important overview of the work that Redlafica is doing. We at INECE look forward to continuing to work closely with Redlafica, and I look forward to seeing you in Santiago in just a few weeks for the next IDB regional dialogue. So, muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. I just wanted, before
Muchas
we turn to
gracias
our
a
next,
todos.
yes. So before we turn to our presentation, which will be on the overview of the compliance and enforcement course, I mentioned that the three significant priorities for INECE for the past year and for the year to come has been similar in many ways to what is the case for Redlafica: climate issues, including HFC enforcement, methane enforcement, enforcement of climate regulations is one of our three principal priorities. The second one has been around plastics and the enforcement issues related to illegal shipment of plastics around the world, as well as issues related to compliance and enforcement for the plastics treaty that's under negotiation. And then technology, both for monitoring and information technology, including the use of artificial intelligence, is our third major priority. So they match up very well with the ones that have been mentioned for Redlafica. I'm now going to turn the program over to Veronica Campos, who has been an important liaison between Redlafica and INECE. And Veronica is a data analyst in the Environmental Intelligence Department in Chile. And she's going to provide an overview of the structure of the inspector's course. So Veronica, thank you for being here, and thank you for all of the work that you've done with us, including work, and I'll mention this at the end, in planning the International Environmental Compliance and Enforcement Summit that will be held in Brisbane in November 6th through 8th. Veronica.
Thank you, Lee. My name is Veronica Campos, and in this presentation, I will give you a brief overview about the Social and Environmental Compliance Inspection Training course. Next slide, please. To start, I would like to highlight the role of IDB in the development of this course, but also in the funding of it. For more than 10 years, the bank has supported Redlafica and Redlaceya by facilitating the regional policy dialogues, which promote experience sharing, strategic partnership, and the identification of common solutions to several issues. An example of this is the inspection training course. In addition to the contribution of IDB, the implementation of this course has been made possible by the support of INECE, the US EPA, and Redlafica members countries. Next one. Following with my presentation, here you have the overview of it. At the beginning, I will tell you how to register in the course. Then I will give you some details about it. After that, we will see the learning objectives, then the structure of the course, and I will finish with the certification. Next, please. So how to register? So you have to visit the official website. This is cursos.iadb.org/n. And here you will find the search bar. Just type SECI, and then you will be redirected to the next slide, please, to this website. Here you have to link in the name of the course, the Social and Environmental Compliance Inspection, link there, and you will be redirected to the next page, next slide. So here, just link register now, fill the registration form. After that, you will receive an email with further details, and you follow the direction that you will receive in this email, and after that, you will be successfully enrolled in the course. Next one, please. Some details about the course that I think are important to mention have relation, for example, with the target audience. This course has been designed for inspectors with or without previous experience, including environmental and social specialists. About the duration, you will need around 22 hours to complete the course, and the deadline for that is November 15th. Next, please. About the requirement, there is no prerequisite about any knowledge. The course is currently in English, so you will need an intermediate proficiency in this language to do it, and 2 hours approximately of commencement per module to complete the course. It's a self-paced course, so you can take the training at any time and in any place at your own convenience. Next, please. So here you have all the learning objectives associated with this course. I won't go over all of them. I just will mention the first 2. The first one is identify the principles, roles, and responsibilities required for environmental and social inspection according to international good practices. And the second one is explain why environmental and social compliance inspection are necessary to ensure regulation and law enforcement. If you want to go over all the objectives or more details about the course, I really encourage you to go and visit the learning guide document. Next one, please. About the structure of this course, I can tell you that in order to provide current inspectors and also future inspectors with the fundamental knowledge and tools to planning and conducting inspection, as well as a detailed guide to carry out on-site and post-inspection activities, this course has been divided in 3 different stages. The first one is the fundamental of social and environmental compliance inspection. The second one is planning and conducting SECI, and the last one is post-SECI inspection activities. Each stage is divided into modules which cover specific topics. Next one. So now if we look at the first stage, I can tell you that the duration is approximately 7.5 hours. This stage has been divided in 5 different modules, and when you are in this stage, you will cover the basic definition, concept, roles, and framework of an inspection. Next one, please. The second stage has the same duration of the previous one, 7.5 hours. It has been divided in just 4 modules. And during this stage, you will learn how to plan an inspection, perform on-site activities, collect samples, identify laboratory issues, and conduct inspection interviews. Next one. And finally, the last stage, the post-SECI inspection activities, is the shorter one. The duration is 4.5 hours, has been divided in just 2 modules, and you will review the critical activities and documenting inspection and managing the enforcement process during this stage. Next one, please. Now about the certification. I have to mention that in each module, you will have quizzes. But in each module, there are also reflective activities that help to prepare for the quiz content. At the end of each stage, you will be prepared to take the stage test. When you pass the stage test, you will receive an stage certification. After getting the 3-stage certification, you will obtain the course certification. Once you get all of the certification, you can also get digital badges, which can be shared on your social media or your digital portfolio. I need to mention that the quizzes and also the stage test has a minimal pass rate of 70%. There is an alternative also to take the placement test for each of the stages, and you need to have a 90% of a correct answer to pass that. Next one. please. After completing the course, we expect you to get knowledge and also tools that will help you to conduct your inspection more effectively and efficiently, resulting in improved compliance and enforcement. Next, please. As I mentioned before, for more information about any topics covered during my presentation, please review the learning guide document. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Veronica. We now have time for questions from the audience. You can ask questions either through the chat function or the Q&A function on Zoom. We have one in Spanish. I don't know whether someone could translate that one. It starts with ¿Qué objetivos ventajas? Veronica, do you see that question? It's in the chat function. Yes.
They said that which are the objectives or that the environmental fiscalization has directly on the environment. En Spanish es ¿qué objetivos, ventajas tiene la fiscalización ambiental que surtan un efecto directo en el cuidado del medio ambiente?
Yeah. So we'll let our panelists respond, but of course, what our principal objective here is to improve the compliance inspection so that the environmental outcomes that are provided for in national laws or local laws are achieved more often, so that the environmental quality is improved as a result of that. I'll let Ariel or Veronica comment if you'd like further on that.
Sorry, I think I didn't hear you very well.
Yeah, as I was saying, I think the principal objective of the course is to ensure that the environmental outcomes that are in national laws are more effectively achieved because you can identify non-compliance, get it corrected quickly, and ensure that the facilities are continue to operate in compliance after a problem has been identified.
Lo que menciona Lee es que como el principal objetivo de este curso sería tener las herramientas para poder identificar como si las empresas están fuera de cumplimiento y de esa manera identificarlo temprano a través de la fiscalización y de esta manera promover el cuidado y como promover, volver al cumplimiento y de esa manera la protección ambiental.
All right. Susanna, do you see any other questions in the chat at this point or in the Q&A?
Sorry, I saw another one that is for me. And,
Okay.
it's the address for the training course, so the website, the URL, but I can type in the chat, so I can share it by myself. But it is cursos, cursos.iadb.org/en. And when you are
Thank you.
there, just type SECI in the searching bar, and you will get the training course.
So maybe I'll ask this question of Ariel. You mentioned that the course is really focused on basics that can be applied anywhere in the world. How might you see the course being supplemented in an individual country to talk about their unique maybe procedures that would apply to an inspection or unique aspects of their laws that might want to be emphasized by a particular agency?
Was that directed at me,
Yeah.
Lee?
Yes.
Yeah, so in addition to this basic inspector training, there are multiple trainings that go into more specifics and specifics on what media the inspectors would want to inspect under, specifics on clean air inspections or clean water inspections. So this particular training is a general training that applies to all inspectors, but we can get into more of the technical details of, how to perform specific, facility inspections that have to, that you need that specialized training for. And there are various training routes you could go through. I know that a lot of the environmental protection agencies inspector training are internal because we talk about things that we don't want the public, that is not applicable for the public. So a lot of our internal inspection trainings are not publicized widely. But I could definitely help find some trainings that are public. I think you're muted, Lee.
I think one of the approaches that we've anticipated is that countries might use the virtual training as a basic training, but try to coordinate their own inspector training that relates to national laws or unique circumstances in the country with the basic training, so that the two approaches might work together in that way. We do have a question which may be hard to answer, but the question is, what if our office opts to do a synchronous training instead of self-paced with the same training modules? That there an option to request a speaker directly from one of our organizations to be part of that training? I don't think we've anticipated that approach, so it certainly is something that we could explore with any one of the organizations. If you're a Redlafica member, there might be some opportunities to have an experienced inspector from one of the countries be available during the training if you wanted to do it as a group training as opposed to doing it as an individual self-training module. Ariel or Veronica, do you have any thoughts about this particular approach where you might want to use the material for group training as opposed to self-paced individual training?
Not really.
I think there are some other questions that somebody placed that are complementing this. Maybe somebody can read that. Kennedy of Wando say that if there is any possibility of interaction with the trainers. Maybe Ariel can explain that this is a self-help training, so it's, maybe you can elaborate more on how the training course works.
Sure. So the one of the major aspects of this training that we wanted to push was the self-paced nature of it and how it could be accessed, anywhere, anytime, specifically so that trainers wouldn't have to come in person and perform this training. So that was one of the major advantages of having this online and accessible to anyone anywhere in the world. Specifically, so to mitigate the concerns of traveling to attend training and the costs associated with that. And in such a online world these days, this is the way that we wanted to push this training to go to.
So we'll be, I think, very interested in feedback from anyone who does choose to take the training course. And in fact, we have a note that said someone has signed up already for the training course. So thank you for signing up. We need to know how this works and whether there are other options that we could consider in the future, like having an expert available online for questions or through email or other ways of supplementing the training. But the principal focus for now is self-training, self-paced, and certainly we welcome your feedback. There's a question for you, Ariel, about what in this training is not covered in EPA internal inspections. Will this training be supplemental or replace existing training? Will it be optional or mandatory to EPA inspectors? In other words, will EPA be using the course itself or encouraging its employees to consider taking the course? And you may not know the answer to that question at this point.
I don't believe that management would want EPA inspectors to take this course over our internal basic inspector training, because our basic inspector training is really focused on a lot of the regulatory and statutory aspects that the United States has, and the Environmental Protection Agency's authority to perform compliance inspections. And this authority looks different from country to country.
I don't see any additional questions at this point. And we don't need to take more people's time than needed. If you do have any additional questions, we'll wait a minute or two to see them in the chat. But you're welcome to contact us at INECE if you have additional questions. Again, it's yep. When can we start the course? Just came in as a question, and the answer to that is at any time. You can start it whenever you choose, including now. Juan Antonio, do you have any concluding remarks?
No, I
you'd like
think
to make?
that what I can see, there is a very good feedback that is coming in the chat. I think some of that are good suggestions that maybe we can really discuss later on. But in the meantime, people will start to register and take the course, be sure that they follow the right information for the registrations. Any misspelling maybe can give you any error or something like that. So it will be important. But there are some good suggestions that maybe in the future we can discuss with INECE and also with EPA. I call it with us in the Environmental Social Solutions Unit and see, for example, for the translation in Spanish, maybe we can take some of them in considerations, but also to have maybe to improve the tutorials for the training. So any feedback, since this is it's been launched, used a few months, and of course any feedback will be important to that. They can send that to INECE directly, and then we can follow any specific suggestion and recommendation.
And we will also send up a follow-up email to participants with the instructions for accessing the course again. So if you are having trouble accessing the course, we'll get that information to you by email. And if you still have any issues accessing the course, you can respond with an email to us at INECE, and we can make sure that you're able to get access to the course. Thank you all very much. Thank you for the time for our panelists, and we hope that you'll find this course useful and important for you as you continue to do the important work of environmental compliance and enforcement.
Fantastic.
With that, I'll conclude the webinar, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Paddock, and thank you everyone that participated. This is a very interesting space, really, to communicate, interchange opinions, and also learn as much we can. Thank you very much, and
Good day.
bye-bye.